Hey everyone, welcome to Wisdom and Wealth. I'm thrilled you're here. Today, we're diving into an ancient secret, one that could completely transform how you understand your own mind. Many of us, especially as we navigate the complexities of life after 40, find ourselves trapped in cycles of overthinking and worry. But what if everything you've been taught about thinking is wrong? What if your thoughts aren't even truly yours? The Shaolin monks discovered this concept centuries ago. The monks knew that when you're thinking, you're actually listening. If you don't grasp this fundamental truth, you'll continue fighting battles within your mind that never belonged to you in the first place. Before we delve deeper into this wisdom, if you find this topic intriguing, go ahead and hit that like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more insights on mindful living and achieving inner peace. Most people operate under the assumption that their thoughts are their own creation, that when they're caught up in their heads, they're in control. But here's a more accurate perspective. Your mind is more akin to a radio, constantly picking up signals from various sources, past experiences, lingering fears, the opinions of others, and societal pressures. If you don't learn to tune this mental radio, you'll perpetually be playing someone else's station, constantly bombarded with external noise that dictates your thoughts and emotions. We're going to break down an ancient Shaolin lesson that challenges this common misconception. This concept reveals the truth, that thinking isn't creating, it's listening. Once you truly understand this concept, you'll find that you will never get lost in the maze of your mind again. This leads us to the illusion of control. Have you ever sat down to focus, only to have a random thought hijack your attention? Maybe it's something embarrassing you said years ago or a worry about tomorrow that you can't seem to shake off. Here's the key point: you didn't consciously choose to think that thought. It simply appeared, like an uninvited guest knocking at your door. That's the first truth you need to acknowledge. Your thoughts aren't truly yours, not in the way you might believe. They're more like echoes, vestiges of old conversations, things you heard as a child, and societal norms ingrained in you. Now, when you find yourself lost in your head, take a moment to identify whose voice you're actually hearing. Is it truly your own, or is it the critical tone of your parents when they scolded you? Is it a teacher who told you that you'd never succeed? Or is it a friend who betrayed your trust? Remember, if you're enjoying this content, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the Buddhist Doctrine channel. Your support helps us bring you more insightful content. Shaolin wisdom teaches us that the mind is like a mirror, reflecting whatever passes in front of it. However, this is where many people become stuck. They mistakenly believe that the reflection is them. They see anger in the mirror and proclaim, "I am angry." They see doubt and sink into despair, declaring, "I am weak." But that's akin to staring at a puddle, seeing the sky reflected, and believing that you've become the clouds. Let me pose this question to you: when you're dreaming, do you control the story? No, it unfolds on its own, with its own logic and direction. Your waking mind isn't fundamentally different. Thoughts rise and fall like breaths. You don't consciously choose them, you simply experience them. The moment you start believing that you're the source of every thought, you grant them power they don't deserve. Now, let's conduct a small experiment to prove this concept. Right now, try your best not to think of a white bear. Go ahead, close your eyes and make a conscious effort not to picture it. What likely happened? If you're like most people, the image of the bear likely barged into your mind instantly. That's the proof. You didn't summon it. The harder you tried to suppress it, the louder it became. This is how your mind operates throughout the day. It throws up thoughts, some useful, most useless, and you, the conscious you, get tricked into wrestling with them. But what if you stopped fighting? What if, instead of grabbing onto every thought as if it were a matter of life and death, you simply observed them like traffic passing by? That's the practice. Sit by the window of your mind and watch the thoughts go by, the honking anxieties, the speeding regrets, and the slow, heavy doubts. You don't have to chase them, nor do you have to stop them. Just notice their presence. Ah, there's fear again. There's a memory resurfacing. There's the mental noise. This is why meditation isn't about emptying the mind, it's about seeing the mind, recognizing that most of what you call thinking is simply recycled clutter. It's like living in a room where the TV is always on, the radio is blaring, and someone is constantly arguing in the corner. You wouldn't call that a state of peak awareness, you'd call it chaos. Yet, that's the mental environment most people inhabit every day, and they mistakenly label it their mind. Now, here's a critical shift in perspective. When a thought arises, pause and ask yourself, did I create this thought, or did it simply appear? 9 times out of 10, it's the latter, a reaction to something external, a leftover from yesterday, or a fear of tomorrow. And the moment you recognize that truth, you are free because you realize that you're not the voice in your head, you're the one who hears it. This is why warriors train in stillness, not to stop thoughts, but to stop believing them. Imagine you're in a forest. Birds are singing, the wind is rustling through the leaves. You don't own those sounds, you don't control them, you simply listen. Your mind is the same. Thoughts come and go, but the problem begins when you grab onto one and say, this is me. So, the next time you find yourself spiraling, perhaps over a mistake, a rejection, or a future worry, pause and literally say out loud, this is not mine. Feel the space that opens up. The thought might linger, but now you know that it's just weather passing through. You're the sky, not the storm. Before we proceed, if you're finding value in this discussion, please show your support by liking and subscribing to the Buddhist Doctrine channel. Your engagement helps us reach a wider audience and provide more insightful content. Let's consider the mirror mind. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a pond at dawn. It's so still that you can see the mountains reflected perfectly on its surface. Now, toss a pebble into the pond. Watch the ripples spread. The water doesn't resist or cling to the ripples, it simply lets them come and go. That's your mind when it's clear, calm, and undisturbed. However, most people's minds are like that pond during a hurricane, with waves crashing and mud swirling. No reflection is clear because the surface is never still. Then they wonder why they feel lost and why they can't seem to find themselves. Here's the truth, you're not lost, you're simply staring at disturbed water, mistaking the chaos for who you are. Shaolin teachings say that the mind's natural state is mirror-like. It reflects whatever is placed before it without judgment and without holding on to anything. Happiness appears, it reflects. Sadness comes, it reflects. But the mirror never becomes what it reflects. A mirror doesn't weep when it shows a crying face, it doesn't blush at beauty, it just is. The practice is to be like that mirror, to see thoughts, emotions, and sensations without fusing with them. Right now, try it. Notice a thought in your head, any thought. Instead of diving into it, step back and observe it as if you were watching a scene in a movie. The thought isn't you, it's just happening. Most people never learn this vital distinction. They think that if they feel anger, they are angry. If they feel fear, they are fearful. But that's like saying a cinema screen is the film. The screen stays the same, no matter what's being projected. Your true self is the same, thoughts move through you but don't define you. Here's how to train this awareness. Every morning, sit for 5 minutes, with your eyes open or closed, whichever feels more comfortable. Your only job is to notice thoughts without labeling them. Imagine that you're sitting by a river and each thought is a leaf floating past. You wouldn't jump in to chase one, you'd simply watch it drift by. Do the same with your mind. At first, it will feel impossible. You'll latch onto a thought about work, an old argument, or a future plan, and suddenly you're mentally miles away. That's completely normal. The moment you realize you've been hijacked, gently return to watching, without scolding yourself or feeling frustrated. Just say, I got carried away. Back to the river. Remember, this isn't about stopping thoughts, it's about changing your relationship with them. Most people are at war with their minds, believing that stillness means no thoughts. But that's like wanting a river with no water. The goal isn't emptiness, it's clarity, seeing thoughts clearly without being enslaved by them. Have you ever noticed how, when you're truly present, perhaps watching a sunset or lost in a creative flow, thoughts slow down? That's not because you forced them to, it's because you weren't feeding them. Attention is like oxygen for thoughts. The less you give, the quieter they become. However, here's where people often make a mistake. They try to force silence. They grit their teeth and think, "I will not think." And what happens? The mind rebels. It's like telling someone not to look at a pink elephant. Suddenly, that's all they see. The secret isn't force, it's interest. When a thought arises, instead of fighting it, get curious. Where did that come from? Trace it back. Most thoughts are like weeds. Pull at the root, and you'll find they're planted in old fears, conditioning, or habits. The more you investigate, the less power they have over you. This is why masters say that to know your mind is to free your mind, not control it, not suppress it. Because when you see thoughts for what they are passing, whether you stop building houses in a hurricane. Now, if you're still with me, and find this transformative guidance beneficial, please consider subscribing to the Buddhist Doctrine channel for more such enriching content. So, today, try this. Every hour, pause and look at your mind as if it were that pond. Notice what's being reflected. Is it calm, choppy, or full of debris? Don't judge, just see. And remember, you're not the ripples, you're the water they move through. Let's consider the three voices in your head. Most people believe that their thoughts are a single stream, one continuous flow of ideas, worries, and plans. But if you listen closely, you'll notice something strange. Not all thoughts are the same. Some feel heavy, like carrying stones from the past. Others buzz with nervous energy, pulling you into futures that don't exist yet. And then, sometimes rarely, there's a quiet thought, one that doesn't drag or push, but simply is. Shaolin teachings recognize this distinction. They don't see the mind as a single voice, but as three distinct forces, each pulling you in a different direction. Until you learn to tell them apart, you'll keep mistaking the echoes for reality. The first voice is the loudest. It's the one that replays old conversations, regrets, and moments you wish you could change. It dredges up memories, not the useful ones, but the ones that sting, the time you embarrassed yourself, the words you wish you'd said, the hurt you can't let go of. This voice doesn't live in the present, it lives in the past, digging up graves and asking you to mourn them again. Here's the trap: the more you listen to this voice, the more it convinces you that the past is still happening, that those old wounds are fresh, and that you're still the person who made those mistakes. But that's an illusion. The past is gone. The only thing keeping it alive is your attention. The second voice is sneakier. It doesn't look backward, it races ahead, spinning stories about what might happen. It whispers, what if you fail? What if they reject you? What if everything goes wrong? This voice feels urgent, as if it's trying to protect you, but really, it's just feeding you fiction. Here's the truth: the future doesn't exist yet. And most of what this voice predicts never happens, but by the time you realize that, it's already stolen hours of your life, hours spent spiraling about storms that never came. Then, there's the third voice, the quietest one, the one most people miss. This voice doesn't live in the past or the future, it doesn't replay or predict, it just notices the feeling of your breath, the sound of rain, or the weight of your body on the ground. This voice isn't telling you a story, it's just here now. And this is where your power lies, because while the first two voices drag you into places you can't change or control, the third voice is rooted in the only thing that's real: this moment. Most people spend their lives lost in the first two voices. They think they're thinking when really they're just time traveling, reliving old pain or rehearsing imaginary futures. The Shaolin way is different. It teaches you to recognize these voices, not as truths, but as habits. So, how do you shift your focus? Start by listening. Next time a thought arises, pause and ask, is this memory? Is this fear? Or is this just what's happening right now? You'll be shocked how often it's the first two. The moment you see that, you have a choice: follow the echo, or return to what's real. This isn't about silencing thoughts, it's about recognizing which ones deserve your attention. The past and future voices are like old radio stations, always playing but full of static. The present voice, that's the clear signal, and the more you tune into it, the clearer everything becomes. Let's consider the trap of overthinking. Watch an animal sometime, a bird on a branch or a cat in the sun. Do you notice anything strange? They don't seem stuck. They don't lie awake at night replaying their mistakes, they don't agonize over what might happen tomorrow, they just are. Now, look at humans. We're the only creatures that torture ourselves with thoughts about thoughts. We don't just experience life, we analyze it, judge it, obsess over it, and we call this intelligence. But is it truly intelligence, or is it just noise? Shaolin wisdom has a name for this: the monkey mind. It's the part of you that swings from thought to thought, never resting and never quiet. It chatters, worries, and doubts. It tells you that if you just think harder, you'll find the answer. But that's the trap. Overthinking doesn't solve problems, it creates them. Think about it: when has worrying ever helped? When has replaying a conversation 100 times changed what happened? When has imagining disaster ever prevented it? It hasn't. And yet, we keep doing it, convinced that this time it'll be different. Here's the truth: overthinking isn't deep, it's just recycling. It's taking the same mental junk and turning it over and over, hoping that it'll magically become useful, but it never does. It just wears you out. So, why do we do it? Because we've been taught that thinking is control and that if we plan enough and analyze enough, we can avoid pain. But life doesn't work that way. Uncertainty is part of existence. The more you try to think your way out of it, the more you suffer. The Shaolin approach is different: it doesn't fight thoughts, it sees them for what they are: passing weather. You don't blame the sky for clouds or yell at the wind for blowing, you simply notice. That's how you should treat your mind. Try this the next time you're stuck in a mental loop. Pause and ask: is this useful? Not, is this true? Because even true thoughts can be useless. Is this helping, or is it just spinning? Most of the time, you'll find it's the latter. That's when you drop it, not by force, but by seeing it clearly, like realizing you've been holding a hot coal. You don't need to decide to let go, you just do. This is why warriors train in stillness, not to empty the mind, but to see through the noise. Because once you realize that most thoughts are just echoes, you stop giving them power. You don't need to stop thinking, you just need to stop believing every thought. So, today, practice this. When a thought arises, don't follow it and don't resist it, just label it. Memory, worry, or planning, and then let it pass. At first, it will feel strange, and you'll keep getting pulled in, but over time, you'll see the space between thoughts widen, and in that space, that's where peace lives. Let's now talk about the art of selective listening. Your mind is always receiving, day and night. It picks up signals from your environment, your memories, and your imagination. But here's what most people never realize: hearing isn't the same as listening. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean you have to engage with it. This is the crucial difference between an untrained mind and a disciplined one. Imagine standing in a crowded marketplace, voices everywhere, merchants shouting, children laughing, and arguments brewing. Now, imagine trying to focus on just one conversation. That's what your mind does every moment. The untrained mind tries to hear everything at once, getting pulled in every direction until it's exhausted. The trained mind knows how to select. Shaolin masters understood this deeply. They recognized that mental discipline isn't about blocking thoughts entirely. That's impossible. It's about developing the skill of selective attention. Your thoughts are like radio stations constantly broadcasting, but the power lies in choosing which stations to tune into and which to let play in the background without disturbing your peace. Here's how this works in practice. When a thought arises, pause for just half a second before engaging. In that tiny space, ask yourself, does this thought deserve my attention? Most don't. The anxiety about tomorrow's meeting, the replay of yesterday's awkward moment, or the imaginary argument you're having with someone, these are just noise. They don't serve you, they don't help you, and they just drain your energy. The more you practice this discernment, the more natural it becomes. At first, you might catch yourself halfway through an unnecessary mental spiral. That's progress. With time, you'll start noticing unhelpful thoughts as they arise before they pull you in. Eventually, you develop what might be called mental filters, the ability to let useless thoughts pass by like clouds while consciously engaging only with what matters. This isn't suppression. It's not about pretending thoughts don't exist. It's about recognizing that your attention is your most precious resource and being intentional about where you direct it. Every moment you spend engaged with useless thoughts is a moment stolen from your peace, your creativity, and your ability to be fully present. Try this exercise, set a timer for 1 minute, close your eyes, and focus solely on your breathing. Notice how quickly thoughts try to intrude. Don't fight them, just notice them and gently return to your breath. This simple practice trains your selective attention muscle. Do it daily, and you'll start noticing the same skill transferring to everyday life. The modern world constantly tries to grab your attention with notifications, advertisements, and endless streams of information. In this environment, selective listening isn't just helpful for inner peace, it's essential for survival. Your mind is under siege every day. Learning to choose what deserves your focus isn't just a spiritual practice, it's mental self-defense. Remember, you are not your thoughts, you are the awareness that observes them. And just as you wouldn't let strangers dictate how you live your life, you don't have to let random thoughts dictate your mental state. The power to choose is always there, it just takes practice to remember to use it. We need to acknowledge that the body knows first. There's a wisdom in your body that your thinking mind can't match. While your thoughts spin stories, make excuses, and create elaborate fictions, your body always tells the truth. Tight shoulders don't lie, a clenched jaw doesn't deceive, and that knot in your stomach isn't imaginary. These are messages, clear and direct, if you're willing to listen. Shaolin training begins with this fundamental truth: the body reflects what the mind tries to hide. When you're stressed but telling yourself that it's fine, your body shows the truth through tension. When you're angry but pretending to be calm, your body reveals it through heat and through restless energy. The body doesn't have the mind's capacity for denial, it simply responds. Here's how to use this wisdom. Next time you're caught in mental loops, worrying, planning, and overanalyzing, pause and scan your body. Start at your feet and notice any tension there. Move up to your legs, your abdomen, and your chest. Feel your shoulders, your neck, and your face. Where is the tightness? Where is the discomfort? These physical sensations are translations of your mental state. Most people live completely disconnected from this bodily wisdom. They ignore headaches until they become migraines, push through exhaustion until they collapse, and override their body's signals with caffeine, distraction, and sheer willpower. Then they wonder why they feel constantly drained, why they get sick, and why they can't find peace. The Shaolin approach is different. It teaches that the body isn't just a vehicle for the mind, it's an essential source of intelligence. Before your conscious mind recognizes stress, your body is already responding. Before you cognitively understand danger, your body has already prepared to fight or flee. This isn't weakness, it's an ancient, refined warning system. Try this now. Sit comfortably and take 3 deep breaths. On the 4th breath, hold it for just a moment at the top. Notice where in your body you feel that pause, that slight tension. That's your body speaking. The places that tighten first and resist relaxation, those are your personal stress indicators. They're unique to you, like fingerprints of your mental patterns. When you start paying attention this way, you begin to catch emotional states before they overwhelm you. That tightness in your chest is anxiety announcing itself before your mind starts spinning worry stories. That heaviness in your limbs is depression, signaling its approach before negative thoughts take over. Catching these signals early gives you the power to address what's happening before it escalates. This is why traditional training always begins with the body. Stillness practices, breathing exercises, and physical forms aren't just about building strength or flexibility, they're about re-establishing the connection between mind and body that modern life severs. They're about learning your body's language so you can understand yourself more completely. The implications are profound. How many arguments could be avoided if people noticed their rising tension before speaking? How many bad decisions could be prevented if people heeded their gut feelings? How much suffering could be alleviated if people recognized their body's signals of overload before reaching breaking point? Start small. Set reminders to check in with your body 3 times a day. Notice your posture, breath, and muscle tension. Don't try to change anything at first, just observe. With time, you'll begin to see patterns, connections between your mental states and physical sensations. This awareness is the foundation of true self-mastery. Remember, your body has been communicating with you your entire life. It's time to start listening, not through analysis or thinking, but through simple, patient attention. The answers you've been seeking in your mind were always available in your flesh, your bones, and your breath. The wisdom was never lost, it was just overlooked. The 5-second rule is crucial to our well-being. There's a critical window between when a thought appears and when it takes root in your mind, approximately 5 seconds. In that tiny space exists all your power to choose whether that thought will grow into something more or whether it will pass like a cloud. Most people miss this window entirely. They don't realize they have a choice. A negative thought comes. I'm not good enough, this will never work, they probably don't like me. Before they know it, they're halfway down a mental rabbit hole, constructing entire scenarios around something that isn't even real. This is how suffering begins, not with circumstances, but with thoughts about circumstances. The moment you miss that 5-second window, the thought gains momentum. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. At first, it's small and easy to stop, but given just a little time and attention, it becomes massive and unstoppable. The key isn't to fight the snowball when it's already huge, the key is to catch it when it's still small enough to dissolve in your hand. Here's how it works in practice. When you notice a negative thought arising, and you will notice if you pay attention, you have about 5 seconds to intervene, not by suppressing it or arguing with it, but by asking a simple question. Is this true, or is this just familiar? This distinction is crucial. Our minds are creatures of habit. They replay what they know, not necessarily what's real. That voice telling you you'll fail might not be the truth, it might just be an old recording from past experiences, childhood messages, or societal conditioning. Most of what we call thinking is just memory. Old patterns repeating because they've worn deep grooves in our neural pathways, like a record needle stuck in a scratch playing the same few notes over and over. The question, is this true, or is this just familiar, acts like lifting that needle. It creates just enough space to see the thought for what it is, not reality, not prophecy, just a mental habit asserting itself yet again. The power of this method lies in its simplicity. You don't need elaborate techniques, and you don't need to meditate for hours. You just need to catch those thoughts early and shine the light of awareness on them. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. Those negative thought patterns start losing their power. They might still appear, old habits die hard, but without your belief fueling them, they become like background noise, annoying sometimes, but no longer controlling your life. Try it right now with whatever thought is present. Maybe it's, this is too hard, or, I don't have time for this. Pause and ask, is this absolutely true, or is it just what my mind defaults to? When faced with a challenge or discomfort, don't rush to answer, just let the question hang in the air. Notice what happens. There's often a slight shift, a loosening of the thought's grip. That's the space where freedom begins. This practice isn't about positive thinking, it's about accurate thinking. It's about recognizing that most of our suffering comes not from facts, but from interpretations, and that we have more choice in those interpretations than we realize. The thoughts that trouble us most are usually variations on themes we've been replaying for years. They feel true because they're familiar, not because they're factual. Over time, this 5-second intervention becomes second nature. You start catching negative thoughts before they spiral, and you begin to see your mental patterns clearly, which thoughts are actually yours and which are just conditioned responses. In that seeing, there's liberation. Because when you realize you don't have to believe every thought that crosses your mind, you reclaim your inner peace. Think of the empty cup method. Imagine trying to pour fresh tea into a cup that's already full. What happens? It spills over, wasted. Nothing new can enter because there's no space to receive it. Now, imagine your mind is that cup. How much of what's already in there is still useful and how much is just stale leftovers taking up space? This is the essence of the empty cup method, creating space for new understanding by first letting go of what no longer serves. We accumulate mental clutter like hoarders accumulate possessions, old beliefs, outdated self-concepts, and fixed ideas about how things should be. These take up all the available space, leaving no room for fresh perspectives or genuine wisdom. As a result, we keep approaching new situations with old mindsets, wondering why nothing changes. The cup stays full so nothing new can enter. The practice is simple but profound: create regular moments of emptiness. This isn't about clearing your mind completely, that's impossible and unnecessary. It's about stepping back from all the accumulated content, all the mental chatter, and resting in simple awareness. No agenda, no trying to figure anything out, just being present with what is. Here's how to start. Set aside 1 minute, just 60 seconds, where you do nothing but listen, not to thoughts, not to external sounds, but to the silence underneath everything. You'll notice thoughts appearing. That's fine. The practice isn't to stop them, but to not engage with them. Imagine them as leaves floating down a stream. You see them, but you don't pick them up. For this 1 minute, you're not trying to solve anything, improve anything, or understand anything, you're just creating space. What happens in that space is remarkable. Insights often arise spontaneously, not because you forced them, but because you stopped blocking them with mental noise. Solutions to problems you've been wrestling with appear effortlessly, not because you found them, but because you stopped looking so hard and allowed them to emerge. This is the paradox. By emptying the cup, it fills with what's actually needed. Most people's minds are like crowded rooms where everyone is shouting and no one can be heard. The empty cup method is like stepping outside for a breath of fresh air. Suddenly, everything becomes clearer. You start to recognize which thoughts are meaningful and which are just noise, and you begin to distinguish between what you truly know and what you've simply been told or assumed. This practice has practical effects beyond meditation. Before important conversations, empty your cup of preconceptions and truly listen. When facing challenges, empty your cup of old solutions and allow new approaches to surface. When feeling stuck, empty your cup of forced effort and let clarity come naturally. In each case, you're making room for what's actually relevant instead of relying on mental habit. The resistance to this is understandable. We're taught that more thinking is the solution to every problem, that if we just analyze enough, plan enough, or worry enough, we'll find answers. But wisdom often comes when we stop trying so hard to be wise. When we empty our cups of everything we think we know, we create space for what we actually need to know. Try it now. Close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths, and with each exhale, imagine you're emptying your mind, like pouring out a cup. Then just sit for 1 minute in that emptiness. Don't try to achieve anything, don't judge the experience, just notice what it's like to have a little more space in your mind. Do this daily, and watch how your relationship with your thoughts begins to change. The cup empties, and in that emptiness, something far more valuable than full cups can ever hold begins to appear. This leads us to the shadow of fear. If you could X-ray your thoughts, you'd see that most of them share the same skeleton, with fear wearing different masks. The fear of failure disguises itself as careful planning, the fear of judgment masquerades as social awareness, and the fear of uncertainty pretends to be rational thinking. We dress them up in respectable clothes, but at their core, they're all variations of the same primal instinct, protection. It's the mind's attempt to keep you safe by imagining every possible danger. Here's what we often forget. The system is outdated. The mind that evolved to protect us from saber-toothed tigers now applies the same vigilance to email responses and social interactions. It treats embarrassment like physical threat, rejection like starvation, and uncertainty like mortal danger. The alarms keep ringing, but the threats are mostly illusions. Shaolin teachings approach fear differently. They don't try to eliminate it, that would be impossible. Instead, they teach how to see fear clearly for what it is: a signal, not a command, a warning light on the dashboard, not the steering wheel. When fear says, "You can't do this," the trained mind responds, "Thank you for sharing," and then proceeds anyway. This shift changes everything. Most people either obey fear blindly or exhaust themselves fighting it. The middle way is simpler. Acknowledge fear without being governed by it. Notice how fear feels physically, the tightness or the quickening pulse, and recognize these sensations as ancient survival mechanisms misfiring in modern context. The body doesn't know the difference between facing a lion and facing a crowd. It's your job to tell it. Try this experiment. Next time fear arises, don't argue with the thoughts. Instead, locate where you feel it physically. Is it a knot in your stomach, tension in your shoulder, or a weight on your chest? Place your hand there and breathe into it. This simple act of acknowledgement often dissolves fear's power more effectively than any logical rebuttal. You're not feeding the fear with resistance or belief, you're just witnessing it. The greatest misunderstanding about fear is that it means something is wrong. In truth, fear often appears exactly when you're about to grow. Its arrival doesn't mean turn back, it means this matters. The Shaolin approach reframes fear not as an obstacle, but as a landmark on the path to mastery. You don't get rid of it, you learn to move with it. This is why warriors train daily, not to become fearless but to become familiar with fear, to know its textures and tricks so well that its appearance no longer dictates directions. They understand what modern psychology confirms: exposure decreases sensitivity. What you face regularly loses its power to control you. The practical application is straightforward but challenging. Do what matters, not what feels safe. Each small act of courage, having the difficult conversation, attempting the new skill, or risking rejection, rewires the fear response. Over time, you develop what might be called fear literacy, the ability to discern between legitimate warnings and false alarms. Most of what we call anxiety is just unfaced fear accumulating like unopened mail piling up. It creates a background sense of dread. The solution isn't positive thinking, it's direct encounter. Name the specific fear. Write it down. Examine it in daylight. You'll often find it shrinks when brought into the open, like a shadow exposed to light. Remember this. When fear arises, it's not about you. Fear is impersonal, it's an ancient survival program running its code. Your power lies not in stopping the program, but in choosing whether to follow its instructions. The thought "I might fail" doesn't mean you will, it just means you care. Let that caring guide you, not stop you. And finally, we arrive at the silent switch. Imagine your mind has two modes, like a radio with only two stations. Most people live their entire lives on the first station, the one that plays non-stop commentary, analysis, and chatter. They believe that this is thinking, but in truth, it's just listening to whatever the mind happens to broadcast. The second station is different. It's not about the absence of thought, but the presence of choice. Here, you're no longer a passive listener to mental noise, and you become a selective curator of what deserves attention. This shift from being at the mercy of thoughts to consciously engaging with them is what we might call the silent switch. Shaolin masters train for years to find this switch, but its mechanism is surprisingly simple. It begins with a single question applied to every thought. Did I call you here? Like a guard at a gate, you learn to distinguish between invited guests and trespassers. The thought about an upcoming project is invited, the replay of yesterday's argument is not invited, the plan for dinner is invited, and to worry about events 5 years from now is definitely not invited. This isn't suppression, it's selection. You're not trying to stop thoughts from arising, that would be like trying to stop waves in the ocean, you're simply choosing which to engage with and which to let pass. At first, you'll catch yourself mid-conversation with an uninvited thought. That's progress. With practice, you'll start recognizing intruders at the gate. The effects compound over time. Each time you disengage from an unnecessary thought, you weaken its ability to command your attention in the future. Neural pathways that once felt like highways become overgrown trails. Meanwhile, the pathways supporting focused attention grow stronger. You're literally rewiring your brain through conscious choice. Here's how to practice. Set reminders to check your mental state 3 times daily. When the alarm goes off, pause and ask, "What station am I?"